here I am in the Salt Lake City Cemetery among some very large trees that have been dropped because of disease and beetles. And they're dropping these trees now among all the beautiful tombstones leading back to 17 something or other. And this tree behind me is 107 years old. And I thought to myself, having studied forestry and knowing these things kind of act like centuries, right? Looking over, experiencing what the world has gone through. And if you look right here, that is when the tree was born. First of all, I have my smart glasses on because we're doing history. If I'm off by a year or two, stop. I don't want to hear about it, okay? Here is the beginning of the tree. This is when it was planted. It sprouted at this point, which is 1917. Puerto Rico was just brought in to be part of the United States, though they don't care about them and they can't vote and we don't rescue them during hurricanes. That being said, we're going to move on now to the 1920s, and that would be up in this area, and the Great Depression happened. Also, Prohibition, which made Al Capone like a king because of the bootlegging. Women's voting, very important. In 1927, that would be right about here, Charles Lindbergh flew the Atlantic for the very first time. The jazz singer, actually right there, was the first full-length movie with sound. All right, Wall Street, the Wall Street crash, let's see, 10, 20, 30. Right there was the crash of Wall Street in 1921. Also 1930, 10, 20, 30, 31, Empire State Building was opened to the public for the very first time. 21st, 23rd, right here, the amendment was changed for the Constitution and Prohibition was flushed down the toilet. And the beer wasn't, for a change. Okay. The New Deal came in, let's see, 1 to 33. So right there, the New Deal came in, and this was to help out all the different people, help farmers get credit, help people buy houses. The CCC was created. That was a Civilian Conservation Corps. They were employing the people of America to do upgrades on all different kinds of structures and stuff. And I just remember them planting them because we'd be in the middle of the woods and we'd walk up and there would be this huge stand of red pine in the middle of nowhere. And that was because of the CCC, but they kept people working, they kept them being paid, and that's what they did. Following that, 1934, the 30s sucked. They really did, because here comes the Dust Bowl. And this is because of a drought, high temperatures, and mismanagement of soil and the farmers. And that's when that happened, 1934. 1937, Golden Gate Bridge, 37 right there. The Golden Gate Bridge opened up. And that saved people a lot of traveling time. Also, let's see, 1939, right here. World War II begins. Right there. And this tree was standing here the whole time. The next 5 years was just war, battle, 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 one after another. To brighten things up, so World War II started here. Right here, Bugs Bunny. Bugs Bunny made his first appearance. Pearl Harbor, 1941, brings us 10, 20, 30, 40, right there, Pearl Harbor, which is just sad. I mean, but this tree was here for it. I mean, I think that's the thing for me, is the fact that this tree saw all these things. It existed during all these different things we've been looking at. Here's another sad one, 1942. And that's when the Japanese American internment camps started. And they started right here as well in Utah, in Delta. And they started, and we know a woman, dear woman, her name is Ray, and she and her family were actually put into one of the camps. And they went from owning a business, owning a house, tending a garden, to the middle of nowhere in barracks because they were a Japanese American. Let's see, Constitution term limits. That was in 1945. That's right here. That means Hatch at this time was already 65 because he's been, yeah. Okay, so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. In 1955, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus, which started basically the civil rights movement. Following that, they also came up with the Civil Rights Act, started in 1960, which was right here, which basically said you can't screw with people at the polls. You can't keep people from going and voting. You cannot intimidate them. You cannot make rules up. Why does this sound so familiar, right? So they cannot do that. So this was going on during the Rosa Parks civil rights movement, and it began in 1955. The space race is on. Sputnik, the very first satellite launched by the Russians, that started the whole thing. And next thing you know, we're all Space Force people fighting in space. Martin Luther King, very sad, 1963, right here. JFK was assassinated. In that same year, Martin Luther King was assassinated. In 1977, let's go through it, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 1973, and I know I'm jumping ahead really fast, Elvis passes away. So Elvis passes away. Let's see, we boycotted the Olympics. That was kind of a big deal because you had all these athletes who've been training for 16, 17, 18 years, and suddenly saying, hey, you missed your prime, you're not going to the Olympics. Challenger disaster right there. And that was a big moment. Probably can notice, I'm not sure if you can see this, but the bands are getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And this represents the weather along the Wasatch Front. If you can see down here, this is a growth ring right here, from here to here. And then you follow it up like here, and you can see how tiny they are. And that's because of drought. So where we have a 7-year drought, maybe a 9-year drought. But this is just tough times for these trees. Might also be one of the reasons why they're taking them down, because they got beetles. They got infested by different bugs that are killing them, and they don't want it to affect other different trees. Let's see, so 1986, the Challenger, 90, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. A Valdez oil spill from Exxon. Do you remember it? And what a big deal it was. And can you picture all the animals being grabbed up and taken care of and washed off, and people going along and sopping up the oil on the beachfront with rags? That was a huge event. Let's see, 1995. It's right here. Operation Desert Storm. We have a lot of people in Utah in the military. I think we remember that pretty well. In 1996 or 95, which would be right here, the Oklahoma City bombing. It's a bad time in this area. And of course here, right here, you and I and the rest of the world were preparing for Y2K. 2000. Because the world was going to end. People were wrapping their computers up in tin foil because they thought the world was going to come to an end. They thought, oh, Xbox is over. All these different things are over. Now, I got to tell you, I'm going to stop at 2000 because hopefully you remember what happened in the last 18 years. Hopefully. I'm sorry if I missed your birthday, but I saw this tree and I thought to myself, this tree's been around for a long time, and that's 100 years. And now it's coming down, and for a good reason, and it's making way for newer trees that they're going to plant, and hopefully they'll be around for another 100 years. But right from there, all the way to there, I just think it's cool.